Hey everybody, and welcome to the Techability Mini Golf project. In this project, we're going to be creating a 9-hole mini golf course, and of course, doing some scripting and programming to allow us to actually play mini golf on the course that we create. We do have a contest attached to this project, so towards the end of the month, everybody will have an opportunity to submit up to all 9 of your holes. With the chance to have one of them selected for a Techability-wide mini golf game. Again, only one hole out of the 9 that you submit will be able to be selected, but if you want to get your chances as high as possible, you're welcome to submit all 9, and we'll try out each one and pick the best. Before we get into all the programming and all that stuff, we do want to set up our first hole as well as the base parts of our golf course so that we can, have a sense for where we're kind of operating and working in our world. So to do that, what we want to do is head into our project panel down here at the bottom of our screen. If your screen for some reason doesn't look like mine, you can go up to this top right button, the very top rightmost of the 3, and it might say something default maybe, or one of these options. We're going to choose tall, and that's going to get you your screen looking like this. So anyways, we're going to look into our project folder. We're going to go into resources and then prefabs. We're going to choose decorations, and then we're going to look at nature, ground. And the only thing that we want out of here right now is just this ground grass prefab asset. And if there's this little bar down here, this little ground grass thing, if I put my mouse over it, I get to these little arrows. If I pull this up, I can actually look at it and get a preview of it over here. So this is just a very flat green square, but this is going to give us a reference for where the ground of our course will be, because we're going to decorate our whole mini golf course as though it were a real mini golf course. So let's go ahead and drag this up and out into our hierarchy and drop it right there. And we'll see its position is set to 0, negative 0.05, 0. We're going to leave it just like that, but we're going to scale this thing up by quite a bit. We're going to go 150 in the X direction and 150 in the Z direction. Now this is way more space than we're going to need, but we're going to err on the side of caution here and make sure we have enough room to work with if we decide to make a few long holes. If somehow you manage to use up all of this space, you're welcome to increase these X and Z values on the transform component, but if not, that's okay. We're going to work with this how it is. The next thing that we want to do is hit the Add Component button. And we're going to add a box collider. Just like that, and you'll probably not notice much because our scene is so big, but if we right-click in our scene view to look around and press the W key and the Shift key to sprint, we can actually get over to the edge, and you can kind of see this green line going across here. We're going to give this a Y size of 1. So it's got a thickness of 1 unit, and then we're going to put its center to -1. And you might be thinking, well, that kind of leaves a little gap between our collider and our actual grass here, and that's exactly what we want. What this collider is going to do, well, we're going to make it a trigger, so we're going to hit is trigger here. And this is actually going to catch our ball if it falls off the course, and then we're going to write some code to make that reset our ball, and then, count that as a hit because you hit it out of bounds. So after we set that up, we want to go to the tag drop down here underneath our name. Again, the name should just be ground grass. We're going to name this, or set this to the tag of reset trigger. Excuse me, so now we don't have to worry about our ball flying off the course and our turn never ending because our ball is off the course. Once you've got the trigger set up, just pick a section of your grass here. I'm going to choose kind of close to the edge because I want to give myself some space to make the rest of my course. So I'm going to be just off this corner here. And again, use the right click to look around in your scene view and WASD to move around. So I'm going to get my camera somewhere about here. Now we're going to go back to our prefabs folder in the resources folder. We're going to find the course prefabs, and here you're going to see just a bunch of options as far as prefabs go for us to make a golf course. So again, for this first hole, we want to keep it as simple as possible. You guys are going to be making 9 holes over your course of the 4 weeks. So if you have some crazy ideas and some really interesting stuff, let's save that for a little bit later. The reason for that is, again, we want to be able to test all of our objects and our scripts and everything as we make it. And we don't want to have to worry about having this crazy hole to play through when we want to test stuff. So having a nice simple starting hole is not only going to make our difficulty level more manageable and give people, a little confidence after the first hole, but it's also going to make testing things for us a lot easier. So we want to make this as simple as possible. My recommendation is to do what I'm going to do here. You are welcome to do anything you would like for our first hole, but like I said, I would probably try to keep it similar to what I'm doing here. So what we want to start with is this end piece. This is a great piece to have your players hit out of. We're going to click it and drag it out into our scene here. And you can see the shadow there. It's showing us that we're just above the ground. We don't have to put it right on the ground. We can have it float a little bit. That's okay. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to put it right about here. And you can see now when we put the course in just how massive this big grass piece is. So we should have plenty of room to work with. I'm going to set it up just like that. And this is a really important piece. So again, you guys could be doing anything you really want with how you set up your course, but for every hole that you make, after you place the first piece, we have to make an empty game object to contain our hole. So I'm going to right click on the piece I just added, which is this end piece, and I'm going to select the create empty option. And that's going to create a child game object of that piece we added, and it's going to be right in the center of that piece. That's exactly what we want. We want this thing to be right in the middle of the piece where our players will be hitting their first shot from. Once I create it, I'm going to actually drag it out by clicking and holding and dragging up until I see this blue line between the piece I've added and the piece above it or below it. So this blue line appears here. So I'm going to drag this out and I'm going to name this one hole 1. And then I will make my end piece now, the piece I added. Now I'm going to make that a child of hole 1. So now we started with this game object as a child of the end piece. Now the end piece is a child of the empty game object. The reason for that is, one, if we need to move our hole from one place to another, we can do so by just selecting the hole 1 game object, and the whole thing will move with us. And also in the contest, you'll be just exporting this whole game object out and sending that to me. So we want to organize our holes this way so that we can, have them easy to organize, or easy to see, easy to organize, and also easy to submit for the contest. The next thing we want to do is just add our next piece. But there's a little trick to this. So what we want to do is pick whatever our next piece is. Mine's going to be probably just the straight piece. Where is it at? Here it is. So this piece called straight, I'm going to, instead of dragging it out into my scene view, I'm going to drag it up and drop it on hole 1. And what that's going to do is put it right on top of the first piece we added, which is exactly what we want, because we need these pieces to be as lined up as well as possible. Any slight gaps or changes in the height between two pieces are going to cause our ball to bounce and move weirdly or improperly. So we want to keep our pieces lined up as well as possible. So if we drop it right on hole 1, we're going to end up with our pieces perfectly aligned. Now what I'm going to do is hold down the Control or Command key if you're on Mac. We're going to hold that down and then click on this blue arrow and drag over to the right. And you're going to see, unlike normally when it moves smoothly, it's going to very choppily move next to our piece. And the reason for that is we've set up this thing called Snap to Grid, which is going to allow us to, instead of, have the ability to, or be forced to try to line it up manually like this, which can be difficult, we can just hold the Control key and it'll snap between points, and one of them happens to line us up pretty much perfectly. Now you'll see there is a little bit of a gap here in my scene view. So after I move it twice while holding control, what I like to do is let go of control, let go of control and then move it back towards the previous piece just a little, just enough to get that little gap to go away. So now you see that there is a nice smooth transition here. If you find when you do this and you start playing that your ball is bouncing a lot between two pieces, one thing that you can do is actually, assuming it's a section like this where it's just a straight shot, you can just extend one of these pieces by selecting it and pressing the T key, and then this little white box appears around the game object. You can select that and drag it out rather than doing it in two pieces. But keep in mind that this is going to stretch out anything on the object in that direction. So if it's got like a windmill or you know, these end pieces surrounding it, it is going to stretch out those end pieces slightly, but it will make the course run a little bit smoother. Anyways, so we've got two pieces set up here now. I'm going to add a second of these straights. So with the straight selected, I'm going to press Control or Command and then tap the D key while I'm holding that Control or Command key down. And then same deal, I'm going to hold Control and move to the right 2 little ticks and then back to the left just a touch to get that gap to go away. And then finally, we need to add our hole. So of course, every hole in our course is going to need a hole for us to hit the ball into. So if we go back to the prefabs folder, there is a holes folder. And here you have 2 different hole options. One is a hole with no borders, and then one is a hole with 3 borders. In this case, we're probably going to want to go with the hole with the 3 borders, but we can make use of the hole open later on other holes. So let's select the hole square, and again, drop that right onto where it says hole 1 to line that up perfectly. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hold Control, move it over. This time we're going to go 4 times over. As you can tell, our object is facing the wrong way, so we need to rotate it 180 degrees back to the left. So if we tap the E key, that brings up our rotation gizmo, and there's this green circle that goes around the outer edge, or the middle of this rotation circle here. We want to click on this green line, but we want to do so again while holding the Control key, because this is going to enable our snap to degrees. And this basically makes it so that just like when we're moving an object, we don't have to move it smoothly. We can snap to specific intervals of rotation. In this case, that's 15. So that allows us to get to a perfect 180 degree rotation that you can see in our rotation property of the transform gizmo there. Of course, you are welcome to just type 180 in rotation here, but sometimes our course isn't at exactly 180 degrees, so it can help to just you know, rotate it using this snap to rotation thing. And then finally, just like before, we have another little gap here, so I'm going to drag that blue arrow back just a little bit to the left and close up that gap. And now I've got a nice simple hole. Again, we want to start out simple because we're going to get it crazy later on. We want to give our players a chance to do something easy, and we also need a hole that's going to be easy for us to test things on. Now that we've got the hole done, what we want to do is add the decorations part of it. So we're not going to include the decorations with our hole. We're actually going to make another game object to hold our decorations. So we're going to right click, and in our hierarchy, we're going to right click and select Create Empty. And then in the inspector over here, it says Game Object. We're going to click this, delete it with the backspace key, and then we're going to type Decorations. And this object is just going to hold all of our decorations for us, so we don't have to worry about them clogging up our scene view. And then for here, this is where you have full creative control. You don't have to follow any rules for this, other than maybe don't put the decorations in the actual course itself. But this is your opportunity to kind of add some personality to your course and make your golf course unique to you. So if we go to our prefabs folder, there's this decorations folder. We've been in here a little bit earlier. And then we have 2 folders here. We have nature and town. Both of these are just full of decorations for you to play with. I'm personally a fan of nature, but there's awesome stuff here in town as well. So feel free to use anything in these two folders. All you have to do is enter one of them, pick the folder that has stuff that sounds interesting to you, so maybe trees, and then you'll just see a list of just a bunch of prefabs here. All you have to do is click and drag them out into your scene. And you see they might, appear underground. That's okay. Once you release it, if you don't have this movement gizmo, you can tap W while the object is selected, and then you can move it around with our movement gizmo as we need, and we can start setting up decorations around our level. Make sure that for every decoration you add, you are putting it under that decorations game object. So you click it and drag it on top of decorations to make it a child of decorations, so that now once we start getting a bunch, we can hit this little collapse arrow, and we don't have to have our hierarchy dominated by our decorations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to decorate the area around my level, or my first hole. I'm going to fast forward through this, but you're welcome to hang out and watch me as I go, and get any inspiration or ideas for things that I am using, if you so desire. So yeah, I will be back with you shortly. And one thing to note as well is it may be easier at some points to add most of your objects to your scene first, and then you can make them all children of decorations at the same time by selecting the topmost option. And so long as there's nothing but decorations between the top object and the bottom object, which you can tell by just looking at the objects, if their name sounds like a decoration, like stump or stone or tree or something like that. If everything between two objects is something you want to select, you can click the top one and then hold the shift key and click the bottom one to select everything in between. And then you can drag all of them at once to be children of decorations. So that's very useful because sometimes you don't want to have to go through and do all of them one at a time. So you can add these prefabs to your scene all at the same time and then make them a child of decorations that way. Another thing that may be very useful for you as you lay out your level is the ability to duplicate objects. So say for example, I'm making a path to where I want to put my next hole, and I have to use a bunch of these path stone objects to do that. What I can actually do is while the object is selected, I can tap the Control or Command key, and then tap the D key to create a duplicated version of that object. Keep in mind that when you duplicate objects, they are put to the bottom of the hierarchy, so you will no longer have everything grouped up at the top for that shift select thing. You'll have to do the bottom ones on their own and then the ones up top on their own. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how my decorations look. I'm gonna grab my last couple of objects I added here and get those to be a child of my decorations object. We can also go ahead and stick the ground grass under there too. It's okay if you don't, but just to clean up our scene a little bit. And I'm pretty happy with how this hole looks. Keep in mind, of course, that we're going to be making multiple holes, so we maybe don't want to spend too much time decorating because we're going to be adding a whole bunch later on. But once you're happy with your first hole, go ahead and save your scene. And keep in mind that we're going to be doing at least 2 of these a week. So, if you don't take so much time or you need to move on to the next step after this first thing, that's totally okay. You're welcome to spend a lot more of your time making the hole, outside of class or whenever you have free time if you want to decorate it up a good amount. Because keep in mind, we're going to start each week by making a hole and end each week by making a hole. So, go ahead and save your scene, and we're going to move on to the next step.